guest on Women on Fire is the beautiful Alison Brahe Daddo. Alison, or Ali as she is commonly called, was only 16 when she burst onto the Australian fashion modelling scene in the mid-1980s, and many of us grew up with her. She graced the pages and the covers of magazines like Dolly, Cosmopolitan and Cleo, and she was a model for companies like Portmans, Nivea, Covergirl and Jacqui E. So a lot of us grew up looking at her and thinking, oh, I wish I looked like her, the way we do. Alison went on to marry TV presenter and actor Cameron Daddo, big heartthrob, in her early 20s, and the couple moved to the United States for Cam's career. While there, Ali quit modelling and fulfilled her dream of becoming a mother, and the couple had 3 children. And she did not rest on her laurels. She worked as an educator. She taught something called Bodyfulmind exercise. She headed up a program helping couples prepare for birth and labour and postpartum. And she went on to get her teaching degree with UCLA and trained in Rudolf Steiner education. So pretty amazing, right? And she's also supported charities for a very long time. She's spent 3 decades sponsoring World Vision children, which is pretty special. Since returning to Australia in 2017, she and her husband now co-host the hit podcast, Separate Bathrooms, interviewing interesting couples. Ali is also a writer on parenting and the joys of being a woman, and she is a patron of Rise Up Australia, which is a charity that supports domestic abuse families into new homes and safe lives. So that's kind of lovely. Her first book is wonderful. It's called Queen Menopause, Finding Majesty in the Mayhem, and it's described as a friendly, frank, compassionate and comprehensive companion for any woman experiencing menopause, and it truly is. Within the pages you get a sense of the lovely person that Ali is. So I'm excited to share this interview with you, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Thank you so much for joining us at Women on Fire today.
Oh, my pleasure. Great name for a podcast.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
For women in menopause.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of women would relate to that term, woman on fire. I think we feel that a lot.
So I'm very excited to talk to you about your life and your experience and your book today. So for those who can see it, this is Ali's book. And for those that can hear, it's called Queen Menopause, Finding Majesty in Your Mayhem. In the mayhem.
Yes.
Because it definitely can be. How did you come up with that name?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't, I think actually Queen Menopause was the first name I came up with, and it came from right towards the end of the book, I talk about wanting women to really feel wonderful, in their menopause somehow or some way. I know that physically we might not be feeling wonderful, but to sort of leverage it in some way that we can come through it or walk through it with some kind of you know what, I got this and I'm fabulous and I'm going to be okay. So I am the queen of my menopause. So that was sort of where it came from in that sense. And then, and it is mayhem, it really is mayhem at times for so many of us. It certainly was for me. And I first floated that name and I said it to my husband and my kids, and they went, oh, so you mean you're queen of menopause? And I was like, oh God, no. I am not the queen of menopause. No, I just want women to feel like they're queen of menopause. And so I scrapped the title for a bit. And yeah, I was going to go with with something like magical mystical menopause or mayhem menopause, something like that. And I'm actually really glad my editor went, no, it's got to be Queen Menopause. You've got to stick with it. So I was like, ooh, okay. So that's hence the title.
It's very cool. I think it works beautifully.
Thank you.
In the book, you call yourself a recovering model.
Yep.
And a recovering people pleaser. And I mean, so many of us grew up with you. You've graced so many of the key magazines and been with Portmans and Nivea. Would you say that you're still a people pleaser? And what did that mean for you?
Do you know, I am still a people pleaser. I am a lot less, like a lot less. And
Right.
I have a dear friend who's actually a psychologist, Rebecca Ray. She's actually written a bunch of books as well. Amazing lady. And I was sort of lamenting to her the other day about, I've got to get rid of this people pleaser, you know. And she's like, why? And I said, it just does me no good, you know, does me no good. And she said, just you don't have to get rid of that because that's part of who you are. That's part of why you're so nice and why you're so kind and why you're so generous. And so I kind of reframed it a little bit for myself. It's like, I can still be a people pleaser as long as it's not at the sacrifice of myself, because that's where I always operated from. I was always at the bottom. I got the worst deal. I was like, I just did everything as much as I could for everyone else and nothing for myself. So I do actually really like to please people. That is part of my personality. So yeah, so I still have that. And I'm happy to say I'm happy with the people pleaser that I've sort of kept. Occasionally I do find myself, the guilt of the people pleaser comes up, like the not so good part where I'm still struggling to go, what if I say no and I'm going to hurt someone's feelings? And so I definitely still struggle with all of that. But yeah, I've been able to say no and put myself much higher on my list of priorities than I ever have through menopause, which I'm so grateful for.
That's amazing. Because I think a lot of us are people pleasers, but it's quite lovely to get her take on that too, that positive side of it.
Yeah, I like that as well.
Yeah, because that's part of your charm probably. I mean, not that I know you.
It's definitely part of who I am. It definitely is. Yeah.
And that comes through so authentically within the pages of your book as well.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming and being a guest, because reading that I thought, I love this woman. I really want to share her message.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
But the amazing thing too in there is that when you were talking about your modelling background, is that you were saying you're an ugly duckling, which it's very hard for some of us to relate to because we all thought you were so gorgeous.
I know. And it's a weird, and when I sort of talk about how I didn't feel like I was anything special and I judged myself harshly and, continue to judge myself for many, many, many years. And, and that's still part of my personality too, that, I'll still look at my body shape and just go, bleh, on some days. And I know, and I see the look on some women's face just going, what? Like but you're on the cover of a magazine and how is this possible? And it doesn't, I think it's just somehow it's inbuilt, sadly, into a lot of women's psyche that you're never enough. You should be more like this. I should have been taller. I should have had bigger boobs. I should have looked like, the Christy Turlingtons of the world. That's who I wanted to aspire to look like. Or the Elle Macpherson body shape, you know? So there was always somebody else to be measured against. That's why it always breaks my heart. And I understand it, but when women say to me, I just wanted to be you when I was 16, I that's all I wanted was to be you. And I'm like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Because I would love I've got a 17-year-old and I just want her to be her. I don't want her wishing to be someone else. But, I get the admiration when we're young kids, but yeah, absolutely had my own self-worth struggles for many, many, many years.
And I think it's amazing that you are so open about that in the pages, because that will help other people look at themselves differently.
Yeah. Yeah, when you realize that everyone goes through it, like I can look, and I'm sure there's other, like the super, super big models have gone through it too. The Cindy Crawfords, and I have no doubt they've had days where they've just gone, oh man, wow, not feeling my best self.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. So you met your husband, Cam. Should we call him Cam or Cameron?
You can call either way. I call him Cam, so you can call him Cam.
Cam. Okay. So you met him at a really young age too.
Yeah, I was only 20 when I met him, and he was 25. So young. So young. Yeah. We were just nuts. Yeah.
And he was the heartthrob, and
yeah,
you were the model, and you moved to the US.
Yeah.
And you can hear a little bit of the lilt in your accent.
I know, and I didn't realize it was there until I got back. Like the first year we'd been back 6 years now. And the first year I got back, and I was talking to this Australian lady. I don't know what we were doing. We were just admiring something at an art gallery or something or other. And she said to me, oh, what part of the States are you from? And I was like, I'm from New South Wales state. I'm not from what? She's like, yeah, she thought I was American. I'm like, oh God, I don't hear it. And I don't hear it with my children either. And apparently they've got a very thick American accent, but yeah, I don't even hear their accent anymore. So I think it must be slowly disappearing. I know I've started saying, I've gone back to saying a jumper instead of a sweater. I think I still say I fill my car up with gas. I haven't quite gone back to petrol yet, but it's all changing back.
Well, it's a long time to live there, though.
Yeah, it's 25 years, long time.
Yeah. So was it difficult to move back to Australia?
It was really challenging. It was one of the hardest, most emotionally devastating things I've done. In hindsight, it was the absolute right thing to do and the best thing to do. And I'm so, so glad to have done it. Right. But it was right at the beginning of perimenopause. I was emotionally like a wreck, and then had to pack up 25 years of my life and my kids and all of the emotions that we were all having. I left all my security, all my girlfriends in one of the hardest physical times of my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, just came here and didn't have anyone to talk to. So I was calling my friends in America, but it just wasn't the same, as having them pop around for a cup of tea. So yeah, it was agonizing for a while.
Why did you move back?
Well, it was a couple of things. It was certainly my husband was getting a lot more work back in Australia than he was in America. And the work he was getting there was a lot of musical theatre happening. And so musical theatre it's fabulous, but it goes for a long time. Like at one point he was away for an entire year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we visited him once. And because we were barely hanging on financially, and so that's why Cam was taking the jobs back here. So he was working out of Australia and paying tax in Australia. Then he was shipping the money back to America, losing all this money on the exchange. Then we would have to pay Californian tax on that money as well. So we were just going week by week with the money. And I was working at a school at that point. Just earning crap money doing that, because teachers just earn crap money. It's even less money in America. And it was just we were missing him, the family was split and we were barely making ends meet. So actually he said, can we just give Australia a try so we're not so split so we can try to, have the family together and work here for a bit. And but what became really more prevalent for both of us was, my parents are 89 and 87 now. His parents are early 80s. We'd spent 25 years away from them. And there was some health concerns coming up for my parents. And I went, you know what? Yeah, I can move back for my mum and dad for sure. And to give Australia a really good shake again for Cam. And it's, as I say, it's been amazing, and it's been so beneficial to be around for my mum and dad as their health has worsened. So yeah, it's been such a good thing. So that's why we moved back.
Oh, I love that. And Australia's embraced having you back too, haven't they?
They have, yeah. It's been really, really gorgeous. And I've had a couple of women particularly who've just gone, I'm so glad you're back in the country. I was like, oh my gosh. It's just been so sweet and so kind. And I think, I'm always still really blown away by the women who do remember me from the Dolly days and the modeling days, because it was a long time. It was 35 at least years ago. And, it's amazing to think that I'm still sort of stuck in someone's memory, but, we do have a lot of hopefully good memories from that time. And I know Dolly magazine was a time for a lot of women where things were really simple and really sweet. And, to be part of that person's memory in that place is a real honor for me.
I think, it's kind of special times to a lot of women, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And going back to Queen Menopause, you share so much in the book. Being raped, having your marriage go through very challenging times, both early and during this menopause journey. And I was thinking as I read that, wow, it can make you so vulnerable to share things like that. And then you address vulnerability yourself, but not so much in terms of the books, but in terms of menopause. And menopause can make us feel vulnerable, can't it?
Yeah. Absolutely, because you feel like you're becoming someone that you don't know. Like that was certainly my experience. I didn't recognize myself anymore. I was having thoughts and feelings and that I didn't understand. Like crazy stuff happening in my brain. And then of course then you've got, not only that, you've got brain fog as well, and where you're like the memory's gone, and then all of it's seemingly almost overnight the body shape has changed and your skin texture's changed and my hair texture. I was like, what is happening? Who am I becoming? So yeah, there's so many or there can be so many challenging changes, of what we go through. And that's why I just wanted to write about that so much, and to sort of explore, like, why is this happening, and why is this happening at this time of our lives? I mean, physically we go through so much as women anyway, through periods and cramping, and, women that struggle with endometriosis, and then people who have, challenges with birth or miscarriage. It's like physically women are incredible with what we deal with. And then you get to this part of your life and you're like, oh, by the way, there's menopause. I was like, hold on. Like, what do you mean? This is what we're now having to go through. So it was really important for me to find silver linings, to find something that could be positive, something that we could sort of just look forward to in some way, shape or form. And as I write in the book, the more people I spoke to who were post-menopause, who talked about this zest and this newfound freedom, and I was like, okay, that I want to know about. Tell me more about that. And look, I feel like it's one of those things you have to like really dig deep and sort of choose to find the positives in it and choose to sort of embrace it as much as you can, because it can be frightening and life-changing. But there is, you know, from all the women I've spoken to, and even hence sort of writing the book, all the doctors I've spoken to as well, there's a lot more help out there now, and there's going to continue to be a lot more help as well as menopause becomes much more of a global issue, which I think it is. I'm really excited for that we are putting more funding into it. We're putting more research. We're talking about it more. So I think we're going to see a lot more support mentally as well, emotionally for women around it, which is really good.
Which I think is so important. And I love the way too that you bring forth the effects it can have on our brain and our thinking. And you call it Mr. Worry and Miss Negative, and that negativity bias that we get. And I think a lot of people don't think, A, that that's something to do with menopause, and B, how much it can impact your life.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, look, it might be menopause. Maybe it's not as well. I mean, often at this age, we're struggling, or no, maybe not struggling, but often we're juggling. That's more of the word. So many things. If we've got kids at home, they might be teenagers. We might be dealing with the elderly parents. We might be stresses at work. And so all of those things could absolutely be impacting you anyway, which is why it's so great to go to a doctor and get all your bloods done and get everything in balance, so you know, is it hormonal, is it not hormonal? But then, you layer menopause on top of all of that, and it feels like, you know, it feels insurmountable at times, that you've got so much that you're dealing with, and yet your patience is run out and your memory's gone and you've just got nothing left in the tank. So it's a lot. It can be a lot to cope with.
I love that you said that, though, that you're probably healthier now than you've been in years, because menopause has sort of pushed you into focusing on your health.
It's absolutely been a huge benefit, menopause, for me. Absolutely. I just was not moving my body. I was definitely not taking care of my health at all. I was eating all I was a healthy eater, but I was still eating all the crap stuff I knew was not good for me, that was making me feel yuck. I was like, whatever. And you know, your body catches up with you as you age. And that was where I realized, oh my God, you've just done nothing for yourself, nothing for your health for so long. And now you're in a health crisis and you've got to do something. And that's what that's why I want women to not get to that health crisis. I want women to start in their 30s going, okay, I've got some changes ahead. What can I do to get ready now for menopause? So they go into it, and maybe their symptoms would be so much less if they go into it with a much healthier, an understanding of it and knowing what's ahead, and knowing, okay, I need to throw the cigarettes away. Maybe I need to reduce my alcohol intake, get my body moving a bit more, things like that we all hear about anyway. All of those things are a health reason anyway to be better. But if you've got menopause ahead, those things really make an impact on your hormones. So if you can change that early, be really good.
Hugely. And do you find, how has the book gone for you? Has it been really well received and women are getting that message?
Look, I honestly have been nothing short of blown away by the reception to the book. Because I thought, would I go out and buy a book on menopause? Probably not. At the time I was writing it, I was like, I don't know if I would buy a book on menopause. Who the hell is going to buy my book on menopause? And especially as I wasn't a doctor, I didn't think at that point I was writing, felt fairly like low on the totem pole of anyone knowing who I was and who would care about my opinion. I mean, they're going to go, that ex-model's talking about menopause, who cares? So I have been blown away. And it has been an absolute delight to talk to, go do these author talks, talk to as many women as I possibly can, do podcasts like your podcast that we're doing right now, and get to talk more about menopause and get it out in the open. And it's really morphed into a lot of just talking about menopause. I mean, the books become almost inconsequential in a lot of ways, because now it's just like, yeah, let's just keep talking about, women's issues and women's health. So it's been really, really delightful and amazing. And part of some of my favorite things have been going to the smaller country towns that I've been invited to and talking to women who are so desperate for information and support because they might only have one GP in town. He's a 75-year-old man who's never studied women's hormones and knows very little because it wasn't in the medical books back then or whatever. And they are desperate. They're desperate. And so that's being able to sort of open up conversation and support in some small way those women has been really, really amazing.
I think it's a big way, probably, because that must be making such a difference to so many women.
Yeah, I really hope so.
What did Cam think of you writing the book?
He was amazing. He was an amazing support. He was so proud of me. He kept on just like, he was my cheerleader the whole way through. I didn't give him bits to read because I thought, I don't know if he'd be that interested. I gave him some bits and just cleared some things with him. But yeah, he didn't read it. He didn't read it from front page to back page until it was certainly published, and he really liked it. He really liked the book. I think he genuinely, of course he was going to say that anyway, but he genuinely did like it. And he's been an amazing support through it all.
I think that's wonderful because I've noticed you guys I held up really as role models for being married for over 30 years, which is no small feat. So it was interesting to read in your book that you had a tough time at the beginning, and then you were totally frank. And a lot of women go through this. There is marriage pause about how you felt like you didn't like him, or maybe you should get divorced, or he was driving you crazy, and yet you loved each other. And of course the intimacy side of things as well, which is such a big thing for so many women. So that's a huge thing, and you've come out the other side of that.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that I hung in there. I'm so grateful because when it became clear that it really was so much about the menopause
Right.
that was driving this wedge between us, it wasn't just something had changed. He didn't become a different person. I just became a lot more irritable, and I had a lot more crazy thoughts, and I was a lot like so sleep deprived that everything that he did was annoying, but he was doing the exact same thing, and I also had to inform him about what was going on as well, so he understood, because he was just absolutely at a loss and
Right.
didn't understand what was happening, why I was the person I was, why I was so cranky and teary so much and didn't want to hold his hand anymore. And he was like, what is going on? And they guys so much want to fix things for you. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell him to fix it. If there was something he could have done that was going to fix it overnight, he would have done it. But once it sort of became clearer and clearer to me what was really happening, and then I could talk to him about it, and just say to him, I just need you to see me as me and not someone who's broken, and I need you to just love me the way I am. And I was giving him scripts to say. I was telling him things. Can you just say this to me? When I talk about how ugly I feel and how gross I look, I just need you to just tell me that you love me. You've always loved me. Just reiterate that for me. Because sometimes he would struggle, as I wrote in the book, and he would say shit that was like, honey, that is not the right words. I'm like, nope, let's try this conversation again.
Because, yeah, I think it's wonderful that you shared that too. And there's that older man that you spoke to, and you told him what you were writing a book on.
Yeah.
And thinking that he wouldn't be interested. And can you share that little tale?
Yeah, it stuck with me so deeply and shocked me so much, because he was probably like, I think he was like maybe early 70s, maybe somewhere around there. And lovely man, and we were just talking at some event. It was some radio event for Cam, and I got to come along, and he was at my table, and we were talking, and he said, what do you do? And I said, I'm actually writing a book. Oh, I love reading. What kind of book are you writing? And I said, nothing you will ever read or find interesting, which is often my way of putting myself down before somebody else can. Part of the people-pleasing thing.
Yeah. And I recognize it.
Oh, there you go. And I said, yeah, it's a book on menopause. And straight-faced, so heartfelt, he said, I so wish I had have had a book on menopause, 20 years or so ago. He said, my wife and I didn't stay together because she went through it and I didn't understand it, and either did she really. And I just wish I had have known back then, because maybe we would have stayed married. And I was gobsmacked that he said that. And it really broke my heart, because I thought, how many marriages have actually menopause torn apart, and again, sometimes menopause wakes women up and goes, actually, this is not the guy for you. He's been a dick for too long and you need to get out. That happens too. But I know that it also is a massive challenge for a lot of couples, and marriages do break down, and that is sad, that is sad that that's happened, all because of a medical, natural, but a medical reason, that we all go through, that every woman goes through.
And because it was swept under the carpet, nobody would talk about it. So it's good to see that shift, because that story just touched my heart as well. And also because I work in the menopause field as well, so I research a lot, and I stumbled across a Facebook group in the States actually a few months ago, and it was for men, and there were so many men in there with broken hearts because the woman that they'd loved for 30 years or forever, however long, had broken up the relationship or walked out, and they were left blindsided.
Yeah. Oh, that is heartbreaking.
So there must be huge numbers.
Yeah, I think so. From what I understand, it's the highest rate of divorce is around that 45, 50, 55 age group. It's also, I believe it's the highest rate of suicide for women as well around that age. Yeah, which is also really alarming.
Yes, it's hugely alarming. I've been looking into that too, because there needs to be more recognition about that and support.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you can go to some very dark places.
Yep.
But then again, you can get some gains as well, right?
Yeah.
What have you seen those to be? What have you felt those to be?
What have I felt what, sorry?
What sort of gains have you seen in any of the women that you've spoken to or in your own life, what have you experienced in terms of the positives?
Yeah. There's been a lot. There's actually really been a lot. Funnily enough, the one thing I constantly hear is how women find their creativity. And
Yeah.
isn't that a wild one? And I think it's like
Mm.
where's that sort of we're repurposing our hormones in a way. Like yes the estrogen goes down and the progesterone goes down, and but also I've heard that it sort of gets reallocated in a way as well. And so I feel like it gets where that estrogen, which is that sort of that love, and progesterone is sort of that love hormone that we're sort of so giving to others and to our children and to our spouses or
Mm.
whatever. And once that sort of reallocates itself and we lose it in a way, I feel like it just opens up this space for ourselves that just women kind of go, you know what do I need? What do I want now? And I remember painting as a kid, or I want to follow this artistic streak that I've wanted my whole life. And I found that to be fascinating, that was a common thread for so many women. And again,
Wow.
that feeling of women talking about this freedom to feel that they can say exactly what they feel, say what they want, say what they need, which they've hidden for so long.
What
Um,
have you called that? The something club?
oh, don't give a fuck club.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I can say that word on the podcast, but I just did. Yeah, that is a huge common theme with women where it's like, I just don't care anymore. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to not go. Um, and I think there's a way that we begin to see ourselves so much more than the physical. And I think that
Yeah.
has absolutely been the best thing for me, where again, I had it, being a model, it was all about the physical. It was nothing about what I had to
Mm.
say or do or think. And so I had that set up from a very early age. It was all about how you looked, you looked, you looked. And of course, in society and social media and the press, it is all about how women look. God forbid we
Mm.
age. That's the
Yes.
first thing that women, in the press, what they talk about. Oh, she's aging well, or she hasn't aged well, or she's a mother of three. When they're describing women, it's not just like they just say her name. It's like mother of three, or it's just a weird thing that they do. Well, it's not really
Mm.
weird. It's just been around for years, but
Mm.
it's we're very much judged first and foremost on how we look and how we're aging. And of course, aging is a disease that needs to be fixed if we are
Yes.
listening to anything in the press, or So I feel like a lot of women, certainly post-menopause, are just like, it's not about how I look, it's how I feel. And that is a massive shift. And that is certainly where I am so much more connected to myself in that way now, which I'm so grateful for. It's like, what do I need to do about my sore knees? Not like, oh, how do I get a thigh gap? It's like, okay, I need to be doing this exercise, or I need to be rubbing this cream into my knees, or I need to see this chiropractor. So, and it's just the best shift, taking that emphasis on how we look, and just, I mean, I just think we're so much more powerful because of that. And we are the wise women of the world, the over 40, over 45s. We have done some stuff and we have
Mm.
experienced some things. And if you're in the business world, you have, I bet you've gotten somewhere pretty exceptional in your life. And I think that we need to be exalted a lot more than we are in the Western society. And I talk about that in my book a lot too, about how in other cultures where you
Yeah.
age and you are the wise women,
Mm.
people go to you for advice and, and respect. But we don't have that in our society, unfortunately. So I think that needs to change. But I feel like, that is part of how we begin to feel. And I think that that's really good.
Yeah, that's great. Sort of taking your power.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ayurveda have done that for years, haven't they? The maid and
The mother and the crone.
yes, thank you. The crone has such bad vibes, but that does actually mean wise women.
That's right. That's right. And I think the crone just needs to be described differently. Like, yeah, but I think, yeah, because the crone certainly sends an image of like a a little warty old bent over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nose with the
that's right. Our fairy tale image of the crone needs to go because a crone can look like, Emma Thompson or, Helen Mirren or, these incredible women, of the world that we're seeing.
and they are incredible and they have some amazing things to say
Absolutely.
on this very subject.
Yes, exactly.
Don't they?
Yep, yep.
So you have an educator background.
Yep.
Do you feel, I mean, probably it's a no-brainer, but do you feel like there is a lot more education that needs to encompass partners, families, and workplaces?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think we can actually go back further, in the sense with women. I had a really interesting experience on one of my very first author talks, which I'm sure I didn't do very well on because I was so nervous. But anyway, it was a small group of women, so it was good. But in the audience was a teenage girl because she'd been dragged along by her mum. They'd probably had to pick her up from netball practice or something. And I was halfway through talking, and the girl turned to her mum and said, "Why don't we learn about this at school?" And
did she?
yeah, and I thought, that is actually really powerful. Like, imagine if our girls, they don't have to go into the big depth discussion about it because the most important thing they're dealing with now is the beginning of their menstruation and what to do around that. But to know that menopause is the end of the menstruation and what they might expect. And so they've heard the word, they understand it. They know that if they can celebrate the beginning of their cycle, maybe they can celebrate the end of their cycle. I think there's like a seed that we can plant there at the very least for girls. But yeah, the education for workplace, I spoke to an incredible lady. Her name's Thea O'Connor. And she is head of menopause at work in Australia. And so she's creating policies, menopause policies in the workplace. And I think that is genius, just to have policies in place where men, your CEO boss who might be a male, understands what it is, understands what you're going through, knows that you might need to have more air conditioning in your office or a few days off here or mental health days and if they know about it, maybe that trickles down to the relationship at home with his wife or his sister or his daughter or whoever. So I think the more information that's out there, the better it is for everyone, not just the menopausal woman, but everyone who's coming across a menopausal woman.
Yeah, because it affects everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the nucleus. And the fact that perimenopause, I had never heard of the term. And I even only heard from one woman a few weeks ago. And she said to me, "Excuse my ignorance, but what is perimenopause?" So probably because we're talking about this and we're immersed in this space, we feel like everyone knows what that is now.
Yeah.
But apparently that's not so. We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. No, we're not. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there still needs to be a lot more information. And I know New South Wales has allocated $40 million to women's hubs that will be.
I read that.
Yeah. So that's really going to focus on menopause and which will be amazing. I do hope again that they get them out to the country areas because that's where it's most needed, I think. But yeah, so more things like that, more funding like that, more there. I just wish that doctors who are, or students who are learning to be doctors now, that there is like a month set aside for hormone
Yeah.
health. So they know exactly what's going on when a woman comes to them and says, I feel weird, I feel suicidal, I've never felt this before, that they're not just given antidepressants and sent on their way. Maybe that helps a little bit, but what else is going on? All those things that women need to be taken seriously, and if the doctor doesn't know, then and they can't help the woman either.
Yeah. And that still happens quite a lot,
It does.
unfortunately.
It does, yeah.
So if you had a message for a woman who's entering perimenopause, I mean, I know you've got lots of messages probably, but what would be a standout one?
I think number one is hang in there. Hang in there and know that you won't always feel the way you're feeling right now. That there is definitely light at the tunnel, that it's not forever, this feeling. And don't be afraid to seek support. And if that doctor you go to doesn't give you what you need, like in a sense of support, find someone else. Even if it's through telehealth, even if it's the Zoom doctor, start asking your girlfriends, who did you go to see? Who supported you through this? There's find the health practitioner that is going to listen to you and actually give you support to get through it, because there's an enormous amount out there that can really make a difference and actually can really give you a lot more health options as you go through the rest of your life. I know that they're finding now with HRT that it's this whole future proofing thing, that it helps with heart health and it helps with bone density as you get older. So, I didn't go HRT, but maybe I should have, because I know that they're just finding more and more health benefits with it. So I think that don't be afraid to ask questions and really find the support that you need. And if you can't, even at the very least, if you've only got one doctor that's, close to you and not anywhere, physically able, just ask them to do a workup on your blood work. Get all your things, get your thyroid tested and your cholesterol and your B vitamins and all of those things. Get all those things as much as you can, a full health workup, so you can at least look at that and go, okay, this is what I can do to give myself a fighting chance to deal with the hormones, the hormone shift.
Yeah. And would you have a message for women in post-menopause?
Oh, I just want them to keep rocking their socks, just to keep at it and whatever they're doing. And and for those postmenopausal women, talk about the good things with the women coming up in perimenopause. Like, reassure them. We hear so much negativity around menopause and it can feel really frightening and overwhelming. So if those postmenopausal women can sort of give a good shout out to the good things that they're experienced to the younger women, that would help as well.
You will get through this.
Yes, absolutely.
This too shall pass.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your musings, your amazing book with us today. It's been such a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on and chatting about it all.
Oh, thank you. Let's keep this conversation going.
Absolutely.